I'm going to jump the gun here and call the meeting to order. It's 5:29 and 5 seconds. Beginning with roll call.
Lewis present? Is that what we say?
Yep.
Thoman here.
Wagner present.
Margaret Beck here.
Sellergren.
Villanueva present.
Burford present.
Reynolds present.
Great. Public discussion of anything not on the agenda? All right, moving on to item D, certificate of appropriateness for 410 to 412 North Clinton Street.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I always have to figure out how to do the slides there. So this project is the development that is associated with landmarking the house, the historic house at 410, 412 Clinton. I did put some of that information in the staff report, but I'll kind of go over it a little bit here too. So it is located here, actually right across from Courier Hall on the university. Basically, the commission in 2016 decided to go ahead and landmark some brick houses that were not protected because they're brick and important structures that could deteriorate and everything. And this house was one that the owner objected. And so the landmarking failed at the council level. Following that, it changed hands. And since then, the city staff basically had been working with the owner developer on a project that would save the house, landmark the house in exchange for some leniency of zoning code requirements, but also it ended up some access across the back of the site and stuff that we'll go through. So,
Jessica, can you clarify, so if the owner had decided that he did not want to compromise, that they did not want to compromise at all, would there have been any restrictions on any development whatsoever?
the development would have to follow the normal zoning codes. And I do believe part of what ended up happening, and I'm not a part of all of this, so I'm not going to know all of the answers, but I do believe that they actually did a special zoning for the property that'll have the bulk of the building. And I think I'm unclear. I don't know if that would have been available if they didn't landmark the building or not.
So this was
but
planning and zoning working with the property
Planning and
owner,
zoning.
not just not historic preservation, not on the historic preservation level. to begin
Not
with.
specifically.
Yeah.
The commission, and I'll point that out a little bit, the commission commented on some of the development proposal along the way at 2 different times, and actually Friends of Historic Preservation commented on it as well. So that beyond the landmarking, this is the 3rd time that the proposal is being seen in any way by the commission. So yeah, it started, I think, specifically with planning and zoning. I don't know, it might have been the city manager or it might have been the planners, I'm not sure, but it did start there.
Was there advocacy coming from historic preservation to?
It had always been known that
Yeah.
we wanted to landmark this property. And so then it was just a matter of, okay, it's changed hands. The new owner knows that we want to landmark it. The new owner has developed other properties. And so is there a way that that agreement can be made?
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's been a very long process. I'm sure he would think it's been an overly long process, but it has. It has had to go through multiple reviews, and in fact, it's, I believe, still a part of the typical design review that any multifamily development like this would have to go through. So the lot that the historic house is on is this one, and it consists of the 1865 house here. It had a small 2-story addition that was in place by 1899 that we know about. On the historic Sanborn maps that I've looked at, there was actually a small garage at one point right in this location, which is clearly not there. In the mid-1960s, I believe, this apartment building, I don't know how many units are in it, were attached on the back, basically attached almost exclusively at this addition. It's kind of interesting. And then there's a garage here that I believe is probably from about the 1930s, maybe a little bit later. And it is unclear, at least from the Sanborn maps, whose garage it was. Just because of the fact that the way this block was originally platted, it had large blocks like this, so then there would have been another one here, and then another one here. But we have an 1860s house, so it's just really unclear historically who this garage was associated with. It might have been with this property. It might have just been with this one. I don't really know. The agreement will take down the house at 400 North Clinton and 112 East Davenport, and there will be a multifamily unit that is placed here. The garage would also come down. Access to the unit would come through this direction, and as I'll show you, there will also be a part of the building that is behind here as well, and that has already been discussed by the commission at one point. So I have some photos. This is just the front facade of the 1860s house. This kind of shows you as you're standing next to that front facade and looking back at the apartment, you know, it's a brick building. It's clearly from the 1960s, and it just exists. This is that looking back kind of at that connection. So part of the brick structure of the addition has been covered in siding. You know, I don't know what the condition of that wall is. If we go back out to the front facade, it's a little dark, but this is looking kind of down the alley. So you see the side of the 1860s house. You see this is the before 1899 addition, the apartment building, and the garage. Here's another shot, the 1860s house and its historic addition, and then I guess it's 1969 apartment building. Here are some photos of the garage. It's a basic 2-car garage. It does have some historic doors that tilt up, small window, lap siding, and it's in tolerable condition, but it is a requirement for the development to proceed that this would come down. So it is part of your review, so you do need to approve the demolition of the garage. So the first time that it came to the commission in January 2020, this is one version. It shows a 6-story building. It has a mansard roof. The mansard roof was kind of echoing what was going on with the Courier Hall across the street. And the comments both from the commission and Friends of Historic Preservation were basically talking a lot about height. There was a lot of discussion on the north side about height at that time anyway. And one of the suggestions was that the mansard roof or hipped roof, whatever you want to call this, actually adds quite a large amount of height and mass to that roof. And so the suggestion was to make it a flat roof instead. And then there was a request to reduce it to 5 floors from 6. And so this is also what we had going on kind of for the site plan at that time, back in January, where, you know, all of the building would have been located here with the drive behind. And so they listened to those comments and came back in December of 2020 with a building that was now just the 5 stories and had the flat roof, kind of reducing that size. Along with reducing that floor in order to make it viable, it now included a wing that went behind the historic house. And this was 3 stories instead of 5. So now, the proposal before you is the review of only the portion of the development that is within the property of the landmark house. So this portion of the building is going through the design review process with planning and zoning, like any other property. And this is the portion that comes to you. The other part of the project was that the historic house would be rehabilitated according to the Secretary of the Interior standards, and we did already go through that process to review that rehabilitation. It was approved by the commission. And one of the requirements, I believe it's before they can get the certificate of occupancy or something related to the new development, they will need to complete that rehabilitation as well. So as you can see, part of what was discussed in that second iteration was including, well, it might have come up in the first, now that I think about it. There was always going to be a brick wall that kind of went from the corner of the facade across to the development, kind of to make a courtyard-like area. And I do remember that one of the comments was that we didn't want to connect that wall to the historic brick structure. You know, an 1860s house has very soft brick, and this also has a nice soft limestone foundation. And so, you know, not touching it would be something that we would suggest. And they have included a gap there as well. So it'll have a metal gate and some landscaping to make this part of the, I'm assuming it's part of the open space for the project. So behind here, you have the 3-story flat roof building. This is going to be brick. The project statement talks about the fact that both the wall and a lower course area of the building that we'll see in a different image will have a darker brick that'll match fairly closely to the historic house brick color. And then the upper floor will have a lighter one that will still blend, kind of just to have a transition and a little bit of something going on there. And there will be double hung windows in at least what staff would consider an appropriate kind of shape, enough rectangular to kind of mimic some of the historic windows that we might see. And then this also shows they're going to do a brick inset between the windows. I mean, that's not something that we'd see on a historic structure, but at the same time, it is part of a modern development. So, I mean, staff doesn't find that that is problematic in any way. Okay. So here is the site plan. And so the current site plan, you see, this is where we're going to have that a courtyard area. Here's the development. Here's the 3-story part of the structure. As you can see, this is where the garage is currently, and the drive will come off the alley. This is the north elevation, and they've included here a sight line, and this shows you that at least when you're in front of the historic house from the street, you are not going to be able to see the development. So you're going to see the development looking down the alley, and you'll see it at that moment, you know, where you can also see the apartment building behind the historic house already. This does show, you can see the overhead doors for the garage access because the garage is below grade, and there are apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floor. This is then the east elevation, so from the neighboring property to the east, and this shows, you know, more of the details. You can see here clearly how that lower course of brick is darker. There are some paired double hung windows in this area. And so there are 2 things that I noted when I was going through the drawings, and they do show up in the staff recommendation, and so I'll point them out now. One is that at this level, we do have a set of windows here on the 1st floor, and we have apartments on the 2nd and 3rd. And the other thing is that we have these balconies that are fully projecting. So this is the 1st floor plan. And so here we have the 1st floor apartments in the main part of the building. Understandably, this is the garage access. However, there's no windows in this wall. And we'll go through the guidelines, but our guidelines would suggest that windows should be there so that any parking in the bottom levels of a property like this do not make the building look like it is sitting on top of a plinth or something, a bare masonry structure. And so it would be recommended to match what that east elevation shows and include the windows on the east elevation. Now, you might wonder then, why wouldn't you put them on the west elevation? And frankly, it is so close to the apartment building that I don't know that it would make any difference to anyone unless they were standing in the alley right here. So the other thing was the balconies. And so this is the second floor plan. And you can see in this case that while the balcony projects a little bit, it is mostly recessed into the structure of the building. When we move up to the third floor plan, it's actually shifted over a little bit and not recessed. And so I think that so staff did comment at one point in time about this and did mention the balconies. And I did not compare those drawings to these specifically, but I do think that it's possible that the elevation showing them fully projecting and this third floor drawing are potentially the previous iteration, and that the second floor showing them set in is the revision. The staff recommendation would be to follow this revision and inset them within the plan instead of having them completely exterior. And we'll kind of go through that a little bit. This is just the fourth floor plan, as in you can see that there's no rooms here, so this is the roof of the portion that you're reviewing. And then I didn't include the fifth floor plan because it doesn't have anything for our part. So the guidelines, we have some regular guidelines that we go through, and I included a little bit, there's 2 balconies, they do have railings. They would be metal railings instead of something like wood that we tend to approve on a residential property, but they should still meet some of the dimensional requirements that we include in our guidelines anyway. And so I included that here, where you'll have a top and bottom rail of a specific dimension. Our section on new primary structures, which this is, it's not an addition to the historic house, it's a new structure. It would suggest that you follow those guidelines on balusters, and so that's part of the reason I included it. It also has a section that talks about siding, and it only says, using siding that is consistent with the architectural style of the new building. Most historic siding in Iowa City is wood. Fiber cement siding with a smooth finish is an acceptable substitute for wood siding in most circumstances. I point this out because on that rear elevation, we have this inset area, and it's my understanding that the proposal is that this would be a metal siding. And I think that we would suggest, according to our guidelines, that this would actually should be not a metal siding, but some kind of a wood or a cement board. I mean, it could easily be a more durable siding. And I don't know for sure. It's oriented kind of horizontal. I don't know if it's meant to be a lap. This is a modern structure. The development has some vaguely sort of Italianate kind of elements to it. And so, what this ends up being, I am not sure. I think that it's possible I would suggest something that was more like a large panel that just didn't draw attention to itself. But I do think that the guidelines are pretty clear that it should not be a metal product. And a metal product would kind of fall into the realm of synthetic siding. We do have an exception in the guidelines to allow synthetic siding, but not on a landmark property, even though it's a new construction. So not even on, say, an outbuilding on a landmark property would we suggest approving a synthetic siding. Okay. back to the guidelines. Okay. The only other guideline here is just about the demolition of garages. You know, typically we suggest keeping them. And so by exception, the commission would be approving the demolition of this garage because it's in, you know, it's in good enough shape that it wouldn't normally come down as a deteriorated garage. Okay, so most of the guidelines that we would follow for this project are ones that we rarely use, and they are for the multifamily buildings. There's a bunch of stuff in the beginning about lighting, and, you know, I didn't have a lighting plan with this project, so I don't know, you know, if it's following that portion of the guidelines. So I think that, you know, when we do the approval, also while it's in the design review, we'll just make sure that it, you know, is basically following some of these guidelines. And the goal of them is to just not have a whole lot of light pollution, basically. So, you know, they talk about carefully placed, downcast, shielded, you know, poles only a certain height, stuff like that. It also includes something about parking lots and garages. Here, we're putting the parking below, we're entering off the alley from the rear. So, you know, in theory and in reality, we'd be following this guideline, I believe. But this is the one where it says where parking is located below a building, any exposed portions of the exterior walls must appear to be a component of the facade of the building. The use of similar materials, window openings, detailing. And so this is why staff would suggest that those windows are included on the first floor in the east elevation. And then this one, so this is one, so staff during the comment period did write back to them and asked them about the fact that, you know, while the development has some semblance of architectural detailing, this portion did not. And so, you know, why was that and what was going on? And they did provide a response that I included in the packet. I don't have it up here, but in general, what it's talking about is the fact that they're building a new construction behind a 1960s apartment building that is behind a historic house. And so the goal is more to have this new construction fade into the background so that it's not drawing attention to itself, it's not competing with the historic house. And staff does find that an acceptable approach because of the fact that, you know, your gaze is already going to be interrupted by that apartment building. And you're also only going to see it from certain aspects. And so not drawing attention to it, staff finds acceptable.
When you say your gaze will be interrupted by the apartment building, you mean the 1960s?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, generally, you know, and when you're standing in front of the historic house, you'll only see the historic house from that view. So. And then this is the one, balconies, decks, and other things should be designed so that they are integrated into the overall design of the building. Methods of integrating may include partially recessing them into the facade, placing them under a roof that is integrated into the overall roof plan, utilizing supports such as, you know, columns, walls, something like that. And so partially recessing it, that does, I think, meet this guideline. However, not recessing it, I do not think meets that guideline because it's the balcony has its own separate little roof. It would just be an appendage to the facade if it's not recessed. And so that's why staff does recommend that they are recessed as shown on that second floor plan. Roof lines should reflect the predominant roof type, existing buildings. And I mean, that's part of these guidelines, but I think we've talked about why the roof is in the configuration it is, partially because of bringing the height and volume down for the overall development. We wouldn't suddenly have like a hip roof on this wing that goes behind the historic house. It would be flat as well. And placement of windows and doors on street elevations consistent with the window and door patterning, you know, found in other properties. and talks about also the proportions. I could not remember that word earlier. The proportions of the window. And like I showed you on that front elevation, we have a couple double hungs that show. And so I think that that guideline is also complied with this. When we don't know how a project fits within the guidelines very clearly, we will look at the Secretary of the Interior standards. I included those here just because it is slightly unusual to have just a portion of a development on a landmark property. And so one way to look at that is making sure that the new additions, alterations, new construction shall not destroy the historic materials that characterize the property. I think it's clear that they are well behind the historic house. The only concern that had ever been there was about the wall and, not compromising the historic masonry. They are differentiated from the old. It's not attached. It's in a compatible but much more simplified style. And then say new additions or adjacent new constructions shall be undertaken in a manner that if removed, the historic property is unimpaired, which I do believe is the case. And in fact, in my opinion, is also the case with the 1960s apartment. I think it could be removed as well.
Mm-hmm. May I ask why that is not in the plan? I'm just curious.
What? Oh, just because it's not something that we would require, and they don't have a plan to do that at this time. So.
Okay.
Okay, so the recommended motion, I think I forgot, it would be understood that there would be exceptions to the guidelines, such as demolishing the garage, et cetera. And so you could say that if you'd like. But staff recommends the approval with the plans are revised to include the first floor windows on the east elevation and to inset the balconies as shown on the second floor plan. We haven't reviewed a new window and door product here. We're not going to be looking for exactly the same type of windows that we would require on a historic new building anyway, but, they will appear somewhat similar. And that the aluminum siding is revised to a product that complies with the guidelines and is reviewed by staff and chair. The reason I wrote this is because of the fact that we are dealing with a very modern construction, and if they do want to propose something that's not like lap siding or, something that has more of a panel look to it, as long as it's not considered like a synthetic siding, I think that we could review it and not have it just be a staff review for something like that, if you guys find that appropriate. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
All right. Let me consult my Robert's order. Clarifying questions from the commission.
I'm curious, Jessica, about the first floor windows on the east elevation that you're proposing. I'm curious, the cars that are going into that garage, are they going underground or would they be visible through the windows?
I don't know exactly where the elevation is, and frankly, their omission in the plan may just be a fact of how things are drawn. A plan drawing technically is cutting through a room 4 feet off the ground. And so I'm assuming that, 4 feet off the ground in all of these apartments, that's what you have. You have cut through a window here, you see kitchen counters, things like that. And so I would still assume that the windows should show because they're aligned on the elevation. So they would show here. However, the floor of the garage is sloping down. And so having done drawings like this professionally and on my own, I do know that sometimes things like that are also forgotten or, obviously. The way that you would draw this, actually, since the floor slopes down, is once it reaches a point, you'd put a cut line through the whole entire garage that shows that continues below the drawing, kind of in a way that people draw stairs, where they show some of them and then there's a cut line because they're not going to show the whole run. So I don't know, Deanna, I don't know how steep this slope is. I mean, there are regulations and codes for that, so it's not going to be overly steep. But I do suppose it could be possible.
Okay. I guess I was just thinking about my own experiences being a pedestrian, walking down a street and thinking, oh, it's just a regular building, and then suddenly you see cars moving in there, which is such a strange feeling. But I guess this is, we do not have a sidewalk. That wouldn't be an experience for a pedestrian in that
No, I
area.
mean, and this area would only be visible from the alley and, I mean, from the neighboring lots as well. And that's part of the reason why the guidelines don't differentiate on, like, oh, if it's in the back, don't, the guidelines talk about the whole thing. And, but yeah, it's not like people are going to be walking by this a lot.
Got it.
But also, historic garages do have windows in them. If you,
That's
so you
true.
can have cars moving around.
Well, and when we even our approval for a new garage, we require that there's an opening on all four sides.
Right.
But I don't feel fooled by that. There's something about just thinking, oh, it's a regular building, but then seeing,
Oh, seeing car windows.
that's just my own perspective, my own thought.
Any other
But
questions?
that's a good point.
As far as the demolition of the garage, it would be nice if Friends of Historic Preservation would have, be invited to salvage whatever materials.
And, that hasn't been discussed. I mean, the owner's here, so he knows
Right.
that suggestion. They are salvaging the other buildings. I mean, to some degree, they've
Right.
been looked at, and I think agreements have been made and stuff. And so, that is something that maybe they could include that in the salvage. I don't know exactly how that'll work out in the schedule of things. I mean, somebody could theoretically pick it up and move it to another lot, maybe. I don't know. But-
Maybe you chair of the commission. I'm always looking for a
We know.
garage. All right. Do we have any more clarifying questions from the commission? Would the applicant like to comment?
You don't have to, but
You-
if you
yeah,
do,
no pressure.
sign in. It's up to you. And if you want me to show a slide in particular, then let me know.
Good evening, Commission. I appreciate you taking a look at this. It's been about a 5-year project now that we've been trying to get going. COVID slowed it down quite a bit, but over the last roughly a year, we've been back on track trying to get this done. We've been working with Jessica and other staff members at the city and just trying to work through it. And, there's a lot of little pieces to it. As far as the garage, I've been working with the salvage barn, Mike Haberkamp, on the other houses, and I mean, it's fair to talk to Mike about that to see if they want to get stuff out of there. And then we'll have private salvage people coming in as well to take things down, but yeah, that's no problem. As far as the windows, just something to note on that, what would be the east side, there's a apartment building directly behind it that runs lengthwise, that does not, those windows are not going to be, I don't think, totally visible. If you look at the building directly behind us, 120?
Yeah, 120.
So the windows are virtually going to be covered, I believe, by that, where the addition would be where the windows are requested. But, I mean, if they're wanted, I mean, and they're on the plan, I believe, on one of the elevations, I mean, that's not a problem to put them in. And I don't think it will be a code issue. That'd just be something, a building code issue if that was a case for any kind of separation, but I don't think that'll be an issue. The siding on this building was originally designed to be metal siding. changing it to a hardy board in one portion of the construction and in a portion that actually faces the alley, I mean, it's up to you, but we'd be changing a product for one area of the building instead of just leaving it consistent with the rest of the building. And we haven't chosen the siding yet. I believe I sent over to Jessica a sample. I'm having difficulty getting siding contractors to actually provide a sample, but we'll get something prior to the construction of it. But yeah, it would be one portion essentially that would go to a different type of product. So if we want to keep the building consistent, we'd like to do it all in aluminum. It's a small section. It does face to the alley, and it's not really visible. But again, that's your call. So, are there any questions?
So can you clarify for me, so it is just this, I guess, north-facing section that would require a different siding?
So on the building portion that you need to review, there's only one section of siding. Now, I am not clear, is it this portion that's siding otherwise?
Yes, the upper portion and the balconies on the large building.
So
would be-
you're hoping to use the same material between
Yeah.
both buildings?
Yeah, whatever is approved in the end, I'd like to use on both, yes.
Understood.
Yeah, and so then that means they've been going through the design review process for the other building, intending all along to use a metal siding. That's.
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Jeff Clark.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
We didn't talk about the other building, right? We don't have any like. I'm
We
looking
do
for
not have any
jurisdiction.
purview over it at
Gotcha,
all.
okay. Yeah.
So the commission had their chance kind of to talk about it during the time in both, January and December of 2020. And that's kind of where it was talked about.
I only asked because I just wanted to know if we had, like, if we already were like, yeah, use that siding, and then now we're like, use a different siding. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, and I don't remember, frankly, discussing details like siding when the commission looked at it before. But we knew that there were large quantities of it that were brick, but I don't remember if we had discussed that. I don't know.
Can't remember either.
I'm not sure. I think that in your planning and zoning review, you've always been discussing it as metal, but yeah, I don't know. And that is, if the commission finds that, it's just a little area and you think it's probably appropriate, I would still suggest that, I haven't seen the sample, and maybe it was going to Parker or Ann or something, I don't know.
Yep,
But, what we could do is just make sure, have Jordan and I review that sample, and if it's fine and the commission doesn't want them to change it to something different in this area, then we could deal with it that way. And the windows, it looks like, okay, so if we look at this aerial photograph that I'll eventually find, the rear end of this apartment building is about equal with the middle of the historic house. And so if we look at our plan, this is the current one, so the garage is almost at that point. So the entire facade along here will be blocked by that apartment building. So again, that is a decision of the commission. If you do not think that it's important to include those windows, then you do not need to, include that condition in the approval.
Do you have anything more that you'd like to say?
No.
All right, thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
Would somebody on the commission please make a motion?
Okay, Wagner recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 410, 412 North Clinton Street, as presented in the staff report with the following conditions. Plans are revised to include the first floor windows on the east elevation and to insert the balconies as shown on the second floor plan. Window and door product is submitted for review by staff, and aluminum siding is revised to a product that complies with the guidelines and is reviewed by staff and chair.
Villanueva seconds.
Great.
Now,
Next time, talk into your microphone, Frank.
I
Instead
thought I
of
was
leaning back.
projecting my voice.
You were.
Could we now discuss
Yes.
maybe swapping out.
Yeah, you guys totally discuss, and if you want to amend your motion, then you just do that.
What are your thoughts?
Here are my thoughts. I personally do not. If it can go under staff and chair review, the materials used, I would be fine with
Right.
the material of the builder's choice, as long as we do have an opportunity to review it. I think that I personally think it's more important that it matches the rest of the building. And then regarding the windows, just seeing how it will. It's tough for me because it's very hard for me to visualize what it might look like without them, and I might regret it if it is just like a brick wall, and the people who live in the apartment building next door might not like it. But it's kind of hard for me to visualize that right now. I'm curious what other people think about
It feels
that.
consistent with, like, not including them. There's a lot of other things that we have where we're like, yeah, that's not that's only visible from one perspective of something, so we'll, like, let it go, or we'll, like, put something that's more modern looking there. So this kind of falls into that to me, where it's like, oh, yeah, like, you're not going to be able to see it unless you're standing at, like, 36 degrees, whatever. Like, it seems too specific. I would be okay not requiring them.
Or if you're in the building next door, like I could see it in both ways. If you're a resident of the building next door, you would look at the wall and either see windows, which would be nice, but then you could see cars driving, which would be confusing. Or you see a brick wall, a blank brick wall, and I think in that case, like the ideal scenario would be thoughtful landscaping, but that's not in our purview, so.
You voiced my thoughts on that one. Same thoughts as a pedestrian. What would it be like to be in the building next door, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, I almost think on a just functional level, I don't know. The windows are kind of, I'm a little weirded out by the windows.
The windows because it's looking into a
It's looking
garage.
into parked cars or driving cars.
The driving cars, headlights, and living in the place next door and seeing that, I wish somebody could build a small model for me and I could.
Jessica, can you go
Sit in
back one
action.
more? My only thought, though, is like by having one more, sorry, where you showed all the windows.
Oh.
Is by keeping the windows, you have continuity over
Yeah.
just across that whole span. That was my thought about that.
And you would be going down, you wouldn't see cars driving along the line of the windows.
No.
They'd be well beneath them by the time, I imagine. It would be interesting to see the grade, but.
Yeah, I don't know if this grade is accurate. If it is and they're driving in at this point, then I'm assuming it's such and such an angle.
So
I don't know.
The garage area is the entire first level of that space. Where would it end? Where does the actual parking area end?
I don't
think it
know
goes
that
under.
I don't know if I included the basement in the slides.
Wouldn't
Maybe I
it probably
haven't.
go underneath
The whole
building? Building and the
The whole
other
thing.
building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other one too, so it's a full L-shaped
Yes.
parking area? I see. Oh, that makes sense. I was like, wow, that's not much parking,
Yeah.
but okay.
Maybe
That's a
we
lot of
need to think
parking.
about the happiness of the drivers.
Yeah.
Do they want daylight as they're driving through?
Well, and I'm wondering about, I'm assuming the garage will be lit at night. And so you do have light coming out of that garage through those windows, and so maybe that will be
I was gonna say-
frustrating to immediate
And
neighbors.
also noise levels to the apartment next door. Glass
Yeah.
is gonna let sound go through
Oh, yeah,
more than
that's
a
true.
It might be less
brick wall.
disruptive
Might
not
be
to
just
have.
less,
To not
yeah.
have windows.
Yeah.
Or do we-
I think that this is, okay, so one of the things we've discussed as a commission is being flexible.
The siding.
I think this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate that we can do that. That's my thought.
So what's being flexible? Just
Not-
leaving it?
Flexible with regard to aligning with staff recommendation, basically. Like whether the windows are recommended, but does the commission feel that they are necessary?
I would say
If we
no.
don't.
I don't think the windows are necessary, and I'm okay, like with you, what you said with the siding being consistent with the rest of the building.
So we would just take those things off of the motion?
I think
Right.
so.
Or amend the motion a little
Whoever,
bit.
yeah,
Right.
whoever makes the motion with the
Would that
amendment.
leave it up to the owner then to decide whether they want windows there or not? Would it?
We can add something where the Jessica and Jordan still have to approve the like siding, but we
Yeah.
just.
No, that for sure.
That-
But we
for sure.
just remove this, that it has to be the cement.
Do talk into the microphone.
Do we know, so the architect designer, did she leave those out specifically just because it's of the revision, or does she have a vision that those windows should be there? Do you know by chance?
I don't know.
On a, without the parking, taken into consideration whatsoever, the building looks much nicer with 3 stories of windows.
I think
that
so. The windows look
absolutely,
better.
100%. That's, I mean, that's a fact.
But we're saying from our guidelines, right? We have forgiven guidelines where you can only see things from a certain perspective. We're not necessarily thinking about this from the perspective of what a neighbor would see. Can we do that? Is that what we, do you know what I mean? Something like this seems to be just like, if you have them, you have them. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if our guidelines actually say you must, because, and with the amount that we've been lenient before on things from, like a, not barely visible, but barely visible kind of a thing, if that makes sense.
We do tend to have considerations about what the neighbors see a lot more in a district than we do in an individual landmark. For instance, in 2015-16, when we were talking about a house on Ronalds and whether or not to take down a small house and build a much longer, deeper house, there was a lot of discussion about that view across the block, basically, from everybody's backyards. We've discussed that on Summit Street as well. And so sometimes, you know, those considerations are really great. It is clear that our guidelines do talk about all sides of the house, but we also have exceptions sometimes for things that are on the back, or we put an egress window in the back and not the sides or the front, you know, stuff like that. So there are considerations made for the non-public sides of a property as well.
Yeah, the one
And
that
it's
comes
neat-
immediately to mind is the one with, we had like to get, like, they wanted roof windows. What's the word I'm looking for?
Skylights?
Skylights, thank you. I was like, sun windows? Skylights. But they had to have something pushed to the back of the house. And we were like, well, that looks odd on the roof line, but because it was from a perspective of somewhere else, we didn't really mind, right? That wasn't going to be seen very much. So this, to me, feels a little bit like that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine. No window.
Do you have thoughts, Kevin?
Just from aesthetically, they're kind of like false windows to my mind. So I think we could do without them.
Okay. All right. Would somebody like to make a motion with the?
Well, Frank made a motion, and so he either needs to reject it or he needs to amend it.
Okay.
Okay.
Before you go at 6:30.
In my microphone here, Wagner recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 410, 412 North Clinton Street as presented in the staff report with the following conditions. Plans are revised to, I'm going to skip down, to insert the balconies as shown on the second floor plan. First floor windows are not required. Window and door product is submitted for review by staff. And staff and chair will review siding
Sample.
sample for approval.
Well done. Seconds that.
Lewis seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And that's that. Thank you. Moving on to 937 East Davenport Street with an addition on the back.
Yeah, and I was really hoping she would come.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm kind of
Yeah,
surprised.
I was very much hoping she'd come. Okay, so this landmark property is located here. It was not on our updated map, so I don't have a little dot like I did for the other one. It is this house,
The smallest.
937 East Davenport Street. Let me actually go to my notes on it quick.
It surprises me when I go past this house, how tiny it is.
I know. It's so adorable.
Yes.
So the owner landmarked it because she had rehabbed it, and she has extensively researched, the Czech people and this family. She had rehabbed a house that they had lived in elsewhere as well. And so once she was completed with rehabbing and landmarking it, then she wanted to sell it and has had difficulty selling it. And so this application is from last year because we've been kind of going back and forth. And she has decided that her plan is to add an addition. And while you might think adding just a single room onto a small house is just really simple and easy, it's actually extremely complicated. And I think still unresolved. So we have this small side gabled one-story house. There is a little attic area, and there's actually a little stairs that go up to it. But it's not an occupiable space legally because it doesn't have the appropriate head height. It's very tiny. But as we know from the landmarking, at one point, there was the couple and their 4 children who were living in this little tiny space.
Oh, my gosh.
So they had put a cross-gabled
Yeah.
structure on the back of that. And so we have the side gabled, and then we have like a rear-facing gable that was added. And then this was added after that, another little rear-facing gable, and this was all in place by the 1920s.
Okay.
This portion of the porch, I don't know exactly when it happened. The very small amount of dugout basement that this has under this portion of the house is accessed through the porch floor. But it's also clear that this house was originally like a crawl space, and so it was dug out in order to have a water heater and your connections for things. And then when the owner did the rehab, she extended the porch in this direction and added the French doors to this room. So there was at least historically, at some point, this portion of the porch and nothing here, and she added this. I will note that the roof that she has put on the house is not a roof that we approve typically. In fact, we started approving or requiring approval of roof changes in order to prevent roofs like this. So that is another part of the project.
And what's it called again? What's this kind of roof?
Well, I mean, technically, this is a standing seam metal
Standing
roof. However, it's an agricultural style because it has many ridges in between the standing seams. And when we approve a standing seam metal roof, we actually want something that's a true flat panel. And so we've worked with owners to find a true flat panel. What the ridges and striations do is it creates little bends in the metal so that it has a less tendency to oil can or kind of pop when it makes, when it gets too cold or too hot. They can counteract that by just using a thicker gauge metal. And so when we require a true flat panel, it's just usually a thicker gauge metal. So here's just another view at the back of the house. You can see it has a single window. The proposal would change that to a door. Another thing you can see here is this is the consistent floor. I mean, to a point, if you've been in it, you know what I mean. But this is the floor level of most of the house. And, anytime we would do it in addition, we would approve an addition that's at the same floor level. We wouldn't, step it down or something like that. Also note that, this has a much lower roof line. So some of our guidelines in order of we have guidelines for additions about continuing the horizontal lines, like the eave condition. We have guidelines about retaining the corners of the house, things like that. And some of that gets a little bit difficult. So here's just a few more views of the side of the house. You can see that this oldest addition is at the same height as the rest of the house, and then this later addition steps down again. Here's just another shot of it from an aerial view, and note how close to the property line it is. one of the property information viewers in this area will show a garage, but I don't believe there's any outbuildings on this property right now. A very large lot. It would have totally been subsistence farming on this lot. I mean, they would have had animals and all sorts of things.
Wow.
Okay, so this is the plan, and part of the concern is that the drawings are somewhat inconsistent and somewhat inaccurate. So we have the site plan, it shows the property line, it shows the front portion of the house. You can kind of ignore these. The building permit people require that plans are labeled with the rooms, and frankly, it doesn't matter. In the historic house, actually along this side, there is the stairs to the attic right here, a bathroom here, and a large closet. So there's actually like a wall. And the porch is in this area. So the plan is to basically add to the back. And I talked to them about the set-ins. So they're showing, I believe it was just like a 6-inch set-in. This house doesn't really have big eave overhangs. It's pretty tight and simple. And then instead of setting in on this tiny bedroom, they are setting in from this. So basically, they have an 18-foot-4 width here, and they are doing a 17-foot wide room on the end. So they're kind of, capping the end of the porch, basically. Part of the issue is the fact that our zoning code requires a 5-foot setback off the property line, and they've drawn that in here. But in no way is that accurate with the property lines that we have here. It might be possible for them to get a minor modification to reduce the property line on the side, but I don't believe it can be reduced to, I think it still has to be like 3'4" or something like that. So regardless, they will need to pull this in.
Is that okay with us?
I mean, it would be setting it in further,
Yeah.
frankly.
We just require a set-in. We don't necessarily.
Yeah.
But
There's a minimum, not a maximum, right?
It would make the bedroom smaller because it still has to be set in on the other side as well from the front building, from the
Yeah,
front
I mean,
portion.
this would be consistent, and this would have to move in.
Okay.
I don't know for sure that means that their door or window could become the door to that room, because if I know that this is only a 10-foot wide room with a door in the middle, and you suddenly move this over 3 or 4 feet, and you might have to just frame a new opening. Honestly, once the addition is done, that wall's inside the house anyway, and so what happens to that single window on the back of it wouldn't really matter from our point of view.
Our business.
Moving it
I have
in.
a question.
Yeah.
Probably was going to say the same thing.
I'm just asking, moving it in is not, this is a planning and zoning thing, right? This is like, you just can't be that close. This isn't a us
Correct.
thing, right?
Yeah, the
Okay,
zoning
perfect.
code requires
Right.
a 5-foot setback.
Gotcha.
Would
So-
they be allowed to lift it up and move it over? Needs a new foundation, probably the whole thing anyway. I know I have
Frank.
to go.
We got to just go with this.
Okay.
I will say that one of the original application was submitted to lift the entire house and replace the entire foundation. That's over $100,000 project, and so that was not looked at. There was another intermediate step that would just repair the foundation in the front room, and that was still like a $70,000 project.
Good golly, at that point, you might as well do the whole thing.
Yeah. So now the iteration is to just add an additional room.
Yeah.
It will have to meet the zoning code, and I do think that the owner is not clear on that. So from this, proposal, it would have to be moved over. Are you leaving now?
Frank?
So Frank Wagner is leaving the meeting. We still have a quorum, so it's okay. I think 1, 2, 3, yeah. Okay, and so here's just another view of it. They were going to have their door here, but I do believe that they're going to have to move over 2 to 3 feet. So it would be maybe a 15-foot wide addition instead. She has kind of shown you, the historic portion of the house is here with the black outline, only it does extend. And then this is how she envisioned the south end of the new addition. Her proposal, here's a maybe clearer view of it. It is, another part of the proposal is that it's just a slab on grade. However, we did look at the fact that the back of the house is already out of the ground a little bit. The site, it slopes barely, but it does slope. And so it'll be further out of the ground. And so it is highly likely that they won't be able to do it as just a slab on grade. It'll probably need to have a frost footing, and that will be something that, again, will come out of the building code, would require a frost footing or not. But similarly, this would have a step and stoop at it because it's not going to be at grade, as shown. So there are some issues with that as well. The east and west elevations would be just a very simple window. That would definitely be appropriate here. Let me go back. Oh, did I not include that?
Would there be gutter in between?
There are some complicated things like that I am not clear on. If you notice, the porch roof was extended and it just goes over the existing roof here. And yeah, there are some water issues with that. And so I don't know how these portions will go together. This drawing is an attempt at kind of a section. And so we have the front portion. But this existing ridge, the front portion, it goes here and then it steps down. And so it's not a continuous ridge throughout those two additions. If this is the new addition that's proposed, there's a gap, and I'm not sure how the new addition roof meets the existing 1920s addition. It's not clear in the drawings.
The new addition would be that much shorter than the existing ridge?
I think that's an inaccuracy of the drawing.
Gotcha.
Because of the fact that we have such a shorter, which one? Staff would recommend that since we are attaching on the back of this portion of the building, that the new addition's ridge is no taller than this addition, and that the horizontal lines that we match are these, the trim that we match is this, the window type and size that we match is this. But staff is still not sure how all of these parts are going to come together, especially in regard to the roof.
I'm curious. Let's say you had a completely separate structure that was not attached except by like a hallway, like a byway. Would that make things less complicated or more complicated? Like four walls separate from,
Right, yeah. Yeah, so our guidelines, at least with a larger house, do say that one of the ways that you can differentiate between a historic structure and the addition is to attach the addition through a breezeway.
Yeah.
Or a breezeway-like.
Can that be enclosed, fully enclosed?
Yeah, the zoning code has some rules about attached garages and breezeways that we don't get into, but yeah, with our definition of a breezeway, it could be fully enclosed.
Like that house next to Deluxe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a house this small, attaching with a breezeway, I think that the rear addition is the breezeway.
Yeah.
Given the
Yes.
size of things that are going on here.
Yeah.
And so I do not think that the appropriate addition is just another gable and extend the train back.
Yeah, true.
Because we would rather keep that last pod as something where we know where its extent is and not just extend it, and setting an addition smaller like we normally do so that we see it would become an unusable space. So I think that it might be appropriate to do a cross gable that matches the other end, so that basically we have two side gables structures connected by, a rear-facing gable.
Sure.
That might be the appropriate thing here, but I do not think that the drawings have worked out how things are going to meet, how the roofs are going to work together. And part of our design review process that we normally go through with additions is to resolve the roof issues like that. If this, this black line here is this roof, and if you imagine it's sloping at you, well, it's also going to be sloping at the historic house. And how are those going to meet properly? It's possible, but the fact that this has to be set in 2 feet or something like that complicates that. And so the guidelines are typical. We have matching openings, and like I said, staff suggests that we match that back portion for everything. Windows that match, she would use wood, so there's no question about the materiality of the, new siding or trim or anything like that. This is a part of the addition section, distinguishing between the historic structure and the addition, matching the key horizontal lines, placing it at the rear. There are a lot of these guidelines that we are following. What?
Well, there's an example that I'm thinking of with a house
Okay.
that I want to show you. It's very hard to see, but it's on North Summit, and it's got these two parts, and then a connecting middle.
It's
Do
at
you
the
know
White
that house
House.
I'm talking about?
The White House?
Yeah.
I used to own that, 105.
Really across,
1005.
near the
Right across.
cemetery and the
Yeah.
hilltop. So it's got those two. It's
So as you're
symmetrical.
looking at the house, one was original, and then the other one was added in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to some respect, I think that that's what this addition is kind of trying to be. She actually was modeling it after a summer kitchen on another property in the neighborhood. The summer kitchen, however, has a board and batten siding, and, our guidelines would say match the house instead of change the siding. But I still think that, that we have some zoning code requirements here that are drastically going to change the design. It's not going to be able to align with the front portion of the house in the way that we would see there.
Right.
Or really expect. And I think that those things need to be worked through.
Can we defer?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering too, it looks like everything is so, we don't have clarity on
Right.
even some
I
of
don't
these
think we
plans. I
can
don't know
make
how
any
what do we
call.
approve of?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
We're on board with the idea of what you're trying to do, but we don't know the specifics of what you're trying to do.
So I think there are a couple things that we could do here. I think that you could defer the whole project. We do know that the building permit process is going to require additional drawings. That's been communicated. However, I don't know that that's really been understood. There was an attempt to find someone to do drawings already, and it did not work out. And so then we have the drawings that we have. I can see a couple things. Yes, you can defer it until those drawings come in, things are resolved in a normal way. However, you also have someone who thinks that this is going to begin construction soon. And it is also a very tiny house. I think that what we can do here is, there's not a lot of options. The commission could also say that potentially this does not need to come back to the commission, but could be reviewed at, say, an intermediate review level between staff and chair.
I mean, I certainly trust you to adhere to guidelines over anybody in the entire town. But my concern is that it's a landmark property. Are we going against our own, basically, ethics as a commission by allowing major alterations on a historic property that is, I don't know. I mean, it just is, can it be done gracefully? Can it be done and?
I think as long as it follows the rules of an
Yeah.
addition, it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, I think it could be done either way. I wrote this saying, maybe the commission can approve the idea of an addition. But then we have to review the window, door, and roofing. You know, the commission would need to decide, first of all, I mean, actually, this one is something that I would prefer that you decide. Do you want to allow an exception so she can match the roof that's on the rest of the house? Or do you want her to have to change that portion of the roof to something else? That's something that would have to be, I think, decided by the commission because of the fact that the entire reason we review roofs is to avoid that specific roof. However, just having an addition not match, I mean, I don't know where the commission falls on that. But that is something that it would be nice to have an opinion voiced at this meeting if we move on with anything but a commission review.
I wish Frank
about
was
the
here.
Right, so we're saying this is
So-
the ghost of a recommendation, right? Because we have
Yeah.
every single one of those things is basically,
You know,
that's the big stuff.
Yeah.
Match the even floor height of the existing southern room. You know, it has wood lap siding, corner boards, and other trim to match the historic house. Okay. The windows match that south-facing window
Right.
that won't exist anymore. And that the roof and addition configuration is reviewed by staff and chair.
And water issues would be addressed in any of these, you know, in the
Well, there would be
configuration.
some code requirements for some of
Yeah.
that too. You know, the code will require some. So this is before you at the insistence of the owner who has applied for a building permit and does plan to move forward right away. We do know that the building permit will not be able to approved as it is, that other things will be required. They will have to meet code.
And she will have to work with you directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can, again, either completely defer until we get something else, or you could potentially do something like this motion, or you could simply just say that you think this project could become an intermediate review instead of a major review if you want. Typically, an intermediate review is a project that's not a certificate of no material effect, so they are making a material change. It's not a minor review, so it's not something that the commission has just been decided can be reviewed by staff. And it's not a major review. A major review is required for large things like this on a property that's contributing or non-contributing in a historic district or a landmark. And so our guidelines would automatically say it's a major review. The commission could decide, we've discussed this, if it, you know, these are our concerns. If we can address these concerns, it can be an intermediate review. You could decide that if you want to.
My interpretation of the motion is that the recommendations here, drawn directly from the guidelines, seem very straightforward.
Yeah.
There are obviously issues that will need to be worked out further, and I feel like that last condition of the staff and chair review of the roof and the addition configuration are the big-ticket items.
And take care of it.
Yes.
And as long as, so I guess that would be
Address.
by definition an intermediate review that the two of you would deal with, and I feel like that would satisfy, I think, our remaining concerns.
Agree.
I agree with you, yeah.
Sure.
Have we
Can we-
made a motion?
I can read the motion?
Yeah, does anybody have any further, I think we're still in questions. Does anybody have any other questions?
I
I
guess-
guess, yeah, go.
Sorry, one of my, I don't know if this is even possible, but I guess I'm not fully sure what the building permit's gonna like reject out of this proposal that they'll have to change. Like, and I guess I have this like weird fear, irrational fear of like, we approve this, she gets whatever the building permit is, changes whatever is asking for it, and then just goes off without getting the rest of the approval that we're requiring.
No, we wouldn't actually issue the certificate of appropriateness until these are done.
Okay.
There, And since I've started here, that's the way we've been dealing with it. There was an attempt a few years ago to kind of streamline things and issue the certificates with the conditions listed. However, I was, just because some owner is like, yeah, the windows meet the guidelines, there's no review of that. And so I did go back to requiring that, if you get a contractor who keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and they use the same windows, and they're completely approved by the commission each time, I'm comfortable with writing a certificate of appropriateness with conditions on it, because I know they'll comply with those conditions. But most contractors, I would not do that. I would make them submit the stuff. So we wouldn't actually issue the certificate, especially until the last one has been dealt with.
Right.
If this owner is not going to put inappropriate siding and trim, except for the fact that she wanted a board and batten, she's not going to put vinyl on it or install vinyl windows or something like that. But I do think that the configuration of the building does need to get worked out, and we would make sure that that happened as part of the process.
All right.
Right. So staff recommends approval
Well,
a
you could
certificate.
say, I move to, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Reynolds moves to
Yeah. Approve.
approve a motion,
A certificate of.
a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 937 East Davenport Street as presented in the application with the following conditions. Window, door, and roofing product information is submitted for review by staff. The even floor height of the existing southern room is matched in the new addition. The addition has wood lap siding, corner boards, and other trim to match the historic house. The windows match the proportion of the south-facing window in the rear addition, and the roof and addition configuration is reviewed by staff and chair.
Louis seconds?
Oh,
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are we not discussing?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know we
can't-
were
do you have-
discussing all the time, but I just have a side comment. Is it
Sure.
okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Retract that vote.
So I guess if the owner were here, part of me just feels like the right person has not come along for this house. It's a tiny house, which is so in vogue right now. I realize it's been on the market for a long time, but I feel like it's just fine for somebody as it is. That person has just not come around.
That did cross my mind, and I know she landmarked it.
Yes.
Because she was planning to sell it, and she wanted to protect it in advance of its being sold.
From
to somebody.
demolition.
Yeah. And found herself in a bit of a pickle.
Yes.
Boy, give me 20 years, I'll buy it. But
I know.
That's the
That's
thing.
no use to her right now.
I know.
I guess my issue is not necessarily with that. It's, I don't know that this plan is a plan.
Yeah.
That to me is like, okay, you've, I don't know, we had a conversation and then you said, can I just get approval for that? That is what it sounds like to me, which is fine. I think ultimately we do this we do with these conditions, but usually we have ideas of what you're doing or what the room will look like or what's going on. But this is all just like, well, this is what she wants the room to look like, but we know that they're going to be, it has to change. It just feels a lot like that. I'm fine with,
I'm basing a lot, the 99.999% of my vote on just confidence in Jessica. So, which is, I think you
And
have
this
it,
is a
we'll have it
good
completely.
So then defer it, no.
I think it's like we do this with conditions. It's
Yeah.
just at this point we have 5 conditions as
Yes.
opposed to just like the 2 we normally have, which are for minor adjustments. This is like, you need to make sure that the house is
Yeah, we
a
need a-
house at the end
And
of
there's
the
still a
day.
major review tacked
Right.
on to the end of these
Right,
conditions.
exactly. So
Right.
I will say that there were some times in the past on the commission, I have seen some past approvals where they did call for redesign in a more elaborate way than we usually do. I mean, not like this, but I mean, it's not totally unusual for things to have some element at least of redesign.
Right.
So it is entirely up to the commission and how you feel about it and whether or not you want to do that.
Well, we've technically already voted.
We voted.
Well, yeah, I mean, you vote. If for some reason you voted and there were no votes and it actually failed, then I would have you make a second motion that maybe either deferred it or something like that instead of just denying it. But-
I really am curious about what Frank specifically would think about this. But, oh well. Do we revote, or are we, does?
Yeah,
does
I think
every-
you should revote. Just
Okay.
go ahead. I mean, because you've had discussion, so.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. With a shrug.
The trust in Jessica and Jordan.
Yeah. Well, I'm entirely basing mine on Jessica's expertise here.
Well, Mary Beth, too, has done a lot for history in Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
her faith in Mary Beth as well.
Yes, I
It's
know
not-
her heart is in the right place, for sure.
The idea is fine. Like, I don't think any of us were like, no. Like, it was just more of a, there's more,
But I
any more
do-
there.
I do agree with you. I do
Yeah,
agree with
so-
you. And that's kind of where the byway thing come, or the breezeway idea came in, is because it almost seems like it would preserve the integrity of the original and the original edition. But
It's
you're-
just so small that I think a breezeway would just end up making it be kind of like an extended train.
I know, yeah, but I'd be curious. I'd be
The
curious.
place where you're supposed to be outside all the time, tending your garden and doing all that, and you just go into sleep.
What's the square footage of the current house without the addition?
I don't know.
I think it's 930 or something.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's
I looked
small.
I drove past the house. I'm like, oh, what an awesome house.
That's not terrible.
It's, no,
It's
mine
not
is
terrible. I lived in
920.
a 430 square foot house, and
But I don't think that includes a lot. I don't think that
buy
includes
it?
a lot. Listen, if this was available when I was buying a house, maybe.
So nobody's been in it?
no, I've looked at the real estate
too.
Yeah.
pictures.
I've dreamt about it.
We've all been on Zillow.
Yeah. And does it feel very small, or when you go in, because in real estate, they always manage to make it look so much larger.
The photos are work
The
some
wide
kind of
angle,
crazy
yeah.
magic. Yeah.
No, there's just a slope in the floor in the front room.
Gotcha, okay. Can that be jacked up, just curious?
The foundation needs some
Yeah.
repair.
Yeah.
Topic.
Okay.
Spread the word, this house is for sale. Maybe
Right.
it'll sell before she needs to.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
All right, moving on. Yeah, good call, Deanna. Item E, report on certificates issued by chair and staff.
Okay, a certificate of no material effect on this house, 529 Brown Street, a key property. The bump out has a new roof. Not that, but it will. Minor review, staff review. We've approved a few things here. This small house in Dearborn Street, all the way at the end, had this rear basement window became an egress window with a window well. Ta-da. No. We'll have a couple projects here too. 312 South Governor, so it is located right there. The driveway and this approach are both replaced, and I mean, it easily met the guidelines and everything. They were able to enlarge the driveway apron just a little bit, so there's easier access. We're reviewing the replacement of the porch steps too, because they're getting rid of these steps by regrading the entire yard. So. Brown Street Historic District, this is a house, asphalt shingles, we normally approve as brown or gray to look as similar to wood shingles as possible. However, when asphalt shingles first started, the grit that they used was a natural material. And it happened to most often be either green, because it was slate, or red, because it was whatever that is. And so historically, there was a period of time where if you had asphalt shingles, you could only get them in green or red. And so then there was also a time when it was kind of popular. We have not really gotten into approving them, but when someone wants to do green, we do a little research and determine that, okay, it might be appropriate given the time period of the house and everything, and that was the case here. we've approved it recently on one other house because it was only a part of the roof and the rest of it was green, and it was a pretty light green.
Will the house stay yellow?
This one is a little darker, and it has a green roof currently.
The house with the paint color will stay yellow?
Why are you giving that look?
Because I don't like the yellow
I
and the green.
love the yellow.
You do?
Green,
You like the yellow with the green
Yes.
roof?
I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about yellow ever, so we're good.
So this house, 515 Clark Street, has a garage that was originally just this portion of the garage, and somebody added a screen porch to it, which is a little strange. So it's totally modified, but the current owner is going to kind of use it as a studio to some degree, but the only thing they're going to modify is add 2 more windows to the back to match the existing, and then they'll also put some kind of a through wall, like air conditioner unit or something like that in there too.
Great. That's an improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one was kind of interesting. I had to look into this a little bit. This house is way down in the corner. It's next to that like law office with the weird red pipe metal and stuff like that. So this house is a little Cape Cod that originally had a basement garage. And in the 70s, I believe, they turned the basement garage into an apartment. And so this is the back. This is where the garage entered. And when they made the apartment, they also added this addition. And what has happened is they're getting a whole lot of water in here and everything. And so they need to replace this. Well, you know, if we were removing a garage and enclosing that, then the rest of the wall would match the foundation material, not be a wood frame structure. And so they are, that's what we've required. And so they're taking out the wood frame portion of the wall here and replacing it with block to match the rest of the foundation. And then it'll still have a door in it and stuff. I don't believe it's an apartment anymore. I think it's all just one single family home, but they do have a walkout still.
All right.
Can I make a very quick comment? So the house at 937 East Davenport, I had said it was over 900 square feet, but this house that held a married couple and 4 children is actually 560 square feet, so just.
Wow. Okay.
All right. In consideration of minutes for June 11th. Deanna?
I actually would like to defer this because I did find something that my name was attached to and I didn't say,
Okay.
and I didn't bring it in. I don't know who said it. but-
Okay. Well,
No problem.
Can
We
I
can-
talk about it in August?
Yeah.
On my birthday? No, the August meeting will be on my birthday. Yeah.
And Deanna, just so you are aware,
Yeah.
if you want to review the minutes and if you have corrections, you can always send them to me
Email,
in
I know.
advance by email. And then at the meeting, I could say, Deanna had these corrections, and we could do it that way as well.
Okay, I'll get into that habit from now on. Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Okay. Wait, you should vote to defer.
Vote to,
Is there a motion?
is there a motion
Coleman
to defer?
Moves to defer the meeting minutes from June 11th, 2024.
Beck seconds.
In favor? Aye.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that says 13.
All right, moving on to commission discussion, we need to vote for a new vice chair. And
And a new chair, actually. I mean,
and chair.
you need to vote for your officers.
Yes, we need to vote for our officers. And if you want to throw me out, that's completely fine.
No, you now have a list. You have a notes app.
I know, now I
Order
finally got my
things.
shit
Yeah,
together and,
absolutely.
I'm not getting deposed.
But
All
you're
right.
still on the commission for what?
through 2025.
Okay, so
yeah.
we're just,
It's just up.
yeah, I see.
We vote for a chair and a vice chair every year.
And it's always the vote takes place in July and then the position changes at the August meeting? Or does it
Whatever.
become immediate after the vote? I don't.
When's your
You will
inauguration
close
day?
the meeting no matter what.
Okay.
And so we'll just, if you're not the chair, then the new chair will be the chair next
I don't
time.
have to go to City Hall jail for the rest of
No.
for the rest of the meeting. Okay, great. So as I would like to say that I have asked Deanna if she would consider being vice chair. Deanna has said that she would, but she has absolutely no interest in ever being chair, no
So
matter what.
That, I feel like, is a real drawback. And the thing is, I would be interested if I had more time. It's just my day job. There is no flexibility. It's hard for me to get to this meeting. I like being involved, if there are times outside of the regular workday, but that's the reason I feel like I can't commit to the chair. And I think for that reason, if there are others who want to be vice chair, please speak up.
What does vice chair entail?
If I were absent, you would lead the meeting.
Oh, God.
And I would provide you with my notes.
Yeah, that was like, I would need that 100%.
You would get help, and obviously, I mean, you don't have to do it perfectly.
Right.
Even nobody does it perfectly, even at city council.
But Jordan needs to continue to be our chair. I'm just saying it.
Agreed.
I would be more than
If
happy
you want to, because you've been doing, I know you had a lot of, you were hesitant about taking it on, but you have done such a wonderful job.
Agree.
I will say it's time consuming
Yes.
but I do think that I think one of the things that has been like my eyes popped open while I was during a deep sleep that to stress me out, and I said I should be working on this right now, and then I said, no, you should be sleeping, keep sleeping, but it was about the awards. But I do think everybody is really like, Andy, you've been really, but everybody's been really kind of pulling weight there, and especially with Friends of Historic Preservation. I think we can get it done, though it might not be when we originally thought it was. We'll see. We get a shrug
our
from
award
Jessica.
ceremony. We can move it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a reminder to text Bob.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that after I stop talking. but-
What is, so what, again, so vice chair, right, is the word, I was like, vice president, is take over for you if you're absent.
Yep. And then I think it's just kind of implied that you would assume through your experience, because you would also have to do reviews with Jessica if I was not available.
Oh, there are times. So, when we have a chair and staff review, if the chair is gone or not available or something like that, then I would reach out to the vice chair. And typically what that is me sending information about the project by email. And then if we need to have a phone conversation about it, we do that. If, I'm flexible as long as it's between 9 and 2, Monday through Thursday. But
I have no problem doing that. I don't want to steal your thunder if you want it. I personally don't really have a problem with saying we have a vice chair who never becomes the chair. That's not a concern necessarily of mine, knowing that you have the support of all of us, but I don't know.
But I think you'd be
Yeah.
great, like if you.
I think so, too.
You have
Yeah.
the interest in it.
Sometimes.
Do you, and I'm just curious if do you have interest in becoming chair if that were to come up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's.
I mean, again, a
grounds
reluctant
for-
leader is the one you want. You know what I mean? So that's kind of,
Absolutely.
Power man.
yeah. I'm
Is
not
there-
coming for your gig or anything.
Is there anybody else who wants to throw their hat in the ring? I know Frank has expressed interest in.
Yeah,
Frank
that's
said
too
when I became chair, he was like, I wanted to be chair.
Can we
might dispute
nominate
that
him
in
an
a minute.
abstention?
he has never expressed any interest to me
He's
about
busy.
He may have been just
either of those.
giving me shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you
Oh,
might.
there. I was going to text you after we finished
not
blabbing. Okay, I would then move to appoint Andy as vice chair.
Or say nominate, maybe.
Nominate,
Okay.
and
Thoman seconds.
great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I vote for myself? I don't know if that.
I think you can.
Aye.
So you should
Sit
do
up.
the same thing for chair, but you should not nominate yourself.
I
I feel
will.
like I nominate Jordan Seligren as chair to continue as chair.
Villanueva seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
Yay.
Okay, we did it.
I'm glad.
Commission, now, moving on to number 2, commission work plan and subcommittees. So we will discuss the awards, which, for anybody who's not involved in the subcommittee, and that would include you, Kevin, or you haven't been wrangled in yet? And
No.
Chris, are you on the list?
I can, like, at the I can
I
help.
think your
with that
email.
stuff.
Okay, we could
I think
loop
I
you
was
in.
on the email, yeah.
So the most recent discussion involved pushing it to February. We first talked about pushing it to October, and then we talked about how that might actually be difficult, and it ended on February. This would be the first time we've actually skipped a full year. It would be 16 months since the last one. But I'm getting shrugs from Jessica, and we could do that.
It also seems like that's a return to how it used
Somewhat
to be.
normalcy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the preference is always to do it during Preservation Month, which is May. But that is a really
It's a-
bad time.
it's a hard time for
You know, you basically have graduation, you have people gearing up and sending in applications for things, projects, and yeah, it's difficult. We've done it. The issue with doing it in September this year is this is a 2 to 3 month process,
Yeah.
and we already don't have enough time.
Yeah.
We have done it in January. In fact, I would say the first 4 or 5 years that I worked here, it was in January. Part of the issue with that is the fact that I'm trying to compile the annual report at the same time, but, you know, that's my work, not the subcommittee's work. And frankly, the annual report doesn't go to the commission until the February meeting anyway.
Yeah.
But the other issue with that is part of what we do is we decide who wins. We reach out to them for more information about their project and their property, and we give them, you know, a good 3 to 4 weeks to respond. And many of the houses that we're looking at here are owned by people who work at the university. And so as soon as that December break happens, they're gone.
Yeah.
In fact, we've had people who have responded like 2 days before the ceremony, before saying, oh, well, I was out of the country for that entire time. And so doing it early in January, even towards the end of January, is difficult just because the owner response doesn't come back in time for us to deal with it well.
Well, another concern is actually getting the signs into the frozen ground. I thought of this the other day.
You can use a drill.
I think February seems fine. What I would ask of the subcommittee is that we also prepare for the next round.
I want structure to this
Some
more.
structure.
If we're
We need-
taking it off of your thing, then there needs to be dates and things and people.
Right,
and
so
tasks
we
and
would
things.
work on that, and like the list of tasks that you sent over the other day, Bob, really getting to know that list and understanding the timelines and how we could adapt that to this timeline, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get the nominations together and ready for the subcommittee, but all of the real work begins after the awardees are decided, just in the
Yeah.
contacts for different people
Yeah.
and gathering information.
And is that typically you who does the outreach, or is it friends, or is it subcommittee, or?
Well, I mean, it used to be that I did all of it. I usually am the person who, like if it's a project that has gone through here, then I usually know who the owner is
Right.
and who the contractor in some cases. And so I have that contact information. But I mean, it's still something that maybe I can somehow compile it and then hand it off.
I'm more
And-
than happy to do emails.
Because there are things, I mean, and we have contractors who don't have email. So sometimes we send snail mail
Oh, God.
letters.
No.
Yeah, we do. I mean, in fact, we used to send all of the owner contact information by snail mail, but now we email if we know it.
Yeah.
If it hasn't gone through us and it's a property somewhere else, might be the only thing we can do is send them a
yeah.
letter.
Yeah. It might not be a terrible idea to do both.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we are probably fine with February. Bob, does that work for you? Sure. Yeah, okay.
Do we need to vote on that?
No, I don't think so. I think just having a conversation about it a
Yeah.
little bit, I mean, so the last awards we had were in 2023. And that was the 2022 Historic Preservation Awards, because we were awarding the things that were done the previous year. I mean, they might have been.
Completed the
Yeah,
previous.
and it was also our 40th anniversary. And so we would be skipping, kind of technically, anything that was like the 2023 awards. I mean, we're not going to have the 2023 awards in 2025.
No, but
That
we-
doesn't make
we
any sense.
could-
But we could just go to switching to, it's the 41st annual awards. And even if we skip 16 months, we could still go on with
Yeah,
annual
yeah.
awards.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
We will resume. I'm adding you to the,
I was on the email.
Oh, you're
chain,
already
yep,
in there.
Because I was
Okay.
reading and there was a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Bob?
I would suggest, even if it's moved to February, that the selection process continue full steam
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I agree.
And how many nominations are there so far, or potential nominations? Are there?
I frankly don't know. I mean, I have taken an email, made it into a PDF, and dumped it into a folder. And I have not looked at the contents of that folder.
Can you share the folder with us?
No,
got
actually,
the
we
email.
don't have, that is another difficulty. I need to talk to the IT department because you will need to get information that I have, and there is no file sharing allowed between the city and outside people.
You can't do Google. If I provide you with a Google Drive folder, can you put things into it?
We've had difficulty with that in the past. We can work through it and
Okay.
see, but,
But a lot of the nominations would have come
They're
through
in the
directly
email.
to Jessica.
Oh.
well, I mean, the ones that you
Most
guys
of
have
them.
done by email, you also have copies of that, so you
Yes,
can make your
yes,
own
we can
list
do.
of
We can get at
that.
least those together.
And I mean, I have a couple that people have given me randomly also. So, I mean, we can get it
The file
compiled.
sharing thing is an issue.
Yeah, we do need to figure that
When
one
you
out.
have commissioners, unless we have our own city commission addresses, it just, how does that work?
Yeah, you don't have your own
You don't
addresses.
anymore.
No.
So-
If you just cut and paste the list and email that.
Yeah, I
of
mean,
the
we
addresses.
can figure it out. I have not had time to even do that in the last few weeks. So hopefully things will be a little better.
Well, I agree, full steam ahead. You know,
Continue to get nominations.
yeah, but we can open it up, once we get them going, I think we can keep the nomination process open until, like, let's say September.
Well, and there are
Maybe.
contractors. I mean, I typically would email all the contractors I knew who work on historic properties and just say, hey, do you have anything? And I mean, frankly, we would have the list of contractors I emailed in the past, I think, so we can get you lists like that so you can email.
I'd be more than happy to
You
do
know,
those
something like
emails.
that.
Emailing is something.
They might
that I
wonder
can
if it's coming, because they have worked with me. So they
Yeah.
be like, who's Jordan?
do. Well,
Or just.
They'll find out.
You can
But-
draft the email and you don't have to worry about what it says. We're just
Yeah,
doing it
whatever.
and
We
just-
can figure that out
but then in
too.
that case, we can just inform everybody that this will include projects from 2023 to 2024, that the award ceremony will likely take place in February. Nominations are due, I would say, maybe by the end of August, possibly by the end of September.
Question for you. Friends of Historic Preservation is having a newsletter coming out, I think in August. And we could put a little article in there that the commission is seeking nominations. One concern about that we've had ever since we've done the awards program going back to the 1980s, is that some people get insulted when they put in a nomination and it's a really bad project and we reject it. So do we want to go
I
that
think-
route of advertising that we're looking for?
It's an award. It's not a kindergarten soccer game, And I think that with a proper disclaimer, we just inform them that there's a selection process and there are a limited amount of recipients.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll do something in our
Yep.
newsletter.
But I think the disclaimer is really important so that people don't believe that
Yeah,
everybody gets an
everybody
award.
gets some.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did have one situation within the last 9 years where someone nominated something and we did not award it. It was not an appropriate project, and I mean, they showed up.
Well, in the language also,
We never contacted them again.
in the language, we can express that, we receive a lot of nominations,
Yeah.
but only so many,
Yeah.
like,
We
it's
contact
Because it's a
exclusive.
nomination, it's not a guarantee.
It's
a
exclusive.
nomination,
We
doesn't
also,
mean you're getting
we
it.
contact them and say, we would like to give you an award, what's more happening, right? So people who.
Yeah, the people who are winners get contacted,
Yeah.
but we don't contact the people who are not winners.
So we
Oh,
would
we
maybe
should-
also say
I don't-
in the disclaimer, like, you recipients of the award will be contacted by this date or something.
Yeah.
Just make sure everything's really clear
Yeah.
so nobody can get mad.
You will be informed.
I
if
think
you are a
something
winner.
simple, just like the fact that, please nominate for the awards, and there will be a selection process for award winners.
Yep. Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
Just a little bit of history. When I first started at the city, and I just continued what was done in the past, we actually had 3 expert jurors come from out of the city, an architect, a historian, and we would have nominations, and then they would go around and judge and then give the awards at the ceremony, and there would be people that the judges would say, they did a lousy job. And we knew after a year or two that this is just really bad because it was turning something that was supposed to be
Yeah.
a celebration into insulting people in town. So we
Wow.
dropped the outside
Okay.
judges.
All right, we'll take the hit. I will say the awards are always really well attended. I mean, last year was a blast, and then at the library, the year prior it was a full house. And
Yeah, we've had, about 100 people or so.
I was talking to somebody at the city today, and she was remarking on how it is a really important part of our outreach, of our public outreach.
Yeah.
So it seems like a luxury. It seems a little bit like superfluous, but it's important. I have to remind myself of that.
It is. It's our biggest element of public outreach. that
And
have.
we can use it to spread our message, and to get people on board for future initiatives, I think, so.
Is there anything else you need to discuss, or can we wrap
I
this up?
don't think, please, it's not that late, but do I have a motion to adjourn?
Beck motions to adjourn.
Louis seconds?
In favor?
Aye.
All right.